Hello and a very warm welcome to an India Today special broadcast. I'm Gaurav Sawant. There's massive escalation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We're getting you all details, with Ukraine claiming that Russia has fired an intercontinental ballistic missile at the Dnipro city. It's a very, very crucial city in Ukraine, and Ukraine claims Russia has fired an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile with a range of over 5,000 kilometers. The question is, why would Russia fire a missile and launch a missile of 5,000 kilometers range at a target which is just a couple of 100 kilometers away, unless the missile is the message, not just to the United States of America, but to its NATO allies. We get you all details. I'm Gaurav Sawant. I also want to get you breaking news that's just coming in from Pakistan. Now we're told there's been a major terror attack in Pakistan and close to 50 people have been killed. 50 people are feared killed in a terror strike in the Hurram area of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan. That's the information that's just coming in. Now this is believed to be a targeted attack on Shia Muslims in Pakistan. The terrorists, according to information that's just coming in, they're believed to be 4 to 5 in number. They overtook a convoy of buses, of jeeps and cars. This was a convoy that was traveling from Parachinar to Peshawar. This convoy was stopped. The 4 to 5 people armed with automatic assault rifles, they came out of their vehicle. They surrounded this convoy and opened indiscriminate fire. That's the information that's just coming in. This was a convoy of buses, jeeps and cars filled with Shias going from Parachinar to Peshawar. We are told that additional terrorists who are hiding in the area, they joined these 4 to 5 terrorists, and they became a part of this killing spree. This indiscriminate firing, according to reports that are just coming in, indiscriminate firing on a convoy of vehicles lasted close to 40 minutes, in which close to 50 people are feared dead. More than 15 to 20 are believed to be critically injured, and the death toll could go much higher. That's the unfortunate reality. That's the information that's coming in. The injured have been taken to hospitals in and around Peshawar. The suspected terrorists are believed to have crossed the border into Afghanistan. That's the latest information that's coming in. There have been multiple reports of Shias being targeted in this area by Sunnis. This is not the first such incident. We are told that 15% of Pakistan's 240 million are Shias, and yet they continue to be targeted by the Sunnis. I want to quickly cut across to India Today's Shiv Arur, who's been collating all this information, and Shiv gets us much more on the story. Shiv, what more can you tell us? When Pakistan was created in 1947, it was supposed to be a place that was safe for Muslims. Pakistan, pure land for Muslims, but it seems Muslims are targeting Muslims in Pakistan, Shiv.
Gaurav, the death toll is rising. The reports from Hurram in northwestern Pakistan in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province suggest that nearly 50 people have been killed. The number is 42, but there are other reports saying the number of people killed is rising. This is one of the biggest such attacks in a place that has been drenched with sectarian violence for a very, very long time. This is the mountainous Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area where a convoy of about 40 buses with civilians, passengers, women, children was traveling between Peshawar and a place called Parachinar. When it came under attack in the Hurram area, there were about 10-12 people with assault rifles who apparently from the sides of the road indiscriminately attacked the buses, instantly killing many of the people. There was a huge amount of panic. Many people sort of just ran off into the mountains, and there's a search going on for the gunmen at this point of time. The victims were all people from Shia Muslims the Sunni Shia sectarian, warfare and violence that has taken place in this area is age old. It's been going on for a very, very long time. Just a couple of weeks ago, 16 people, including 6, women and children, were killed in similar fashion. 2 separate incidents, up to 20 Pakistani soldiers were killed as part of the Sunni Shia crossfire in this area. It's been going on for a long time. These are extremely violent tribal councils, that have blood grudges as far as sectarian identity is concerned, and something that Pakistan has not been able to stop, for many decades, and who knows for how long. And it's also a reminder to the world that, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which has always said it's a safe haven for the Islamic community. Just look at the kind of blood being spilt between sects. Shias are considered second-class citizens there. Ahmadiyas and others are considered, not even Muslims. There are frequent incidents of violence against them in that country. So this is there for the entire world to see. And what's happening in Hurram with, at least 42 killed and that number rising. Once again, a reminder that Pakistan is a terribly unsafe place, for everyone, for all of its citizens. And this is the same country that's trying to convince the world to send their cricket teams, for a Champions Trophy in that country.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Shiv. When Pakistani citizens are not safe, when the Pakistani army is not safe, when they're higher than mountains and deeper than ocean friends, Chinese are not safe in Pakistan, they expect India to send a cricket team for Champions Trophy, and they say Pakistan is safe. I want to also bring in Professor Brahma Chilani. He tracks Pakistan very closely. He's one of India's best-known strategic affairs analysts. Of course, he's joining us on the story on Russia and Ukraine. But Professor Chilani, would you want to weigh in on these reports that are coming in? At least or close to 50 feared killed in a single day's one terror attack in Pakistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, sectarian violence, Shia-Sunni violence, or in a way, one way, Sunnis killing Shias in Parachinar to Peshawar area?
Well, it shows how Islamists today are really in charge of Pakistan's destiny. They're seeking to Arabize Islam in Pakistan. They have been targeting minorities. Hindus have been decimated. They have decimated Pakistan's tradition of Sufism by demolishing shrines and attacking preachers. They've extended the attacks to members of the Ahmadiyya sect. The Shias have been targeted in a major way. And the same thing is now sought to be replicated in Bangladesh, where extremists are targeting that country's syncretic tradition of Sufism. They're attacking Ahmadiyyas, and of course, the large Hindu minority, whose numbers have dwindled over the last 3 decades. They are bearing the brunt of the attacks. And the irony is this, that the US is supporting the military-backed regimes in Pakistan and Bangladesh, while it's saying to overthrow the military regime in Myanmar. Now, these are 3 neighbors key neighbors of India, and you have American policy pursuing different objectives in Bangladesh and Pakistan, propping up these military-backed regimes, and in Myanmar, seeking to overthrow the military regime and creating problems for India in terms of India's internal security, especially with the arms coming in from Myanmar into Manipur.
Oh, you're absolutely right. But if I want to stay for a moment and have General Rakesh Sharma joining us in just a couple of moments on this special broadcast. But Professor Chilani, you first, and then I'll bring in Shiv once again into this conversation. More than 1,500 people have been killed in Pakistan this year alone, in 2024 alone. And this isn't the worst year yet for Pakistan. 2023 was worse. What do you make of what's happening in Pakistan? And give me a moment, Professor Chilani. I have Hurram Iqbal, who joins us from Pakistan for more on this. Hurram Iqbal, ये जो पाराचिनार और पेशावर के बीच घटना हुई है, इसके बारे में आप हमें और क्या बता सकते हैं? तफसील से बताइए, हुआ क्या पाकिस्तान में?
जी, सबसे पहले तो आपको अस्सलाम वालेकुम, नमस्कार। और आज सुबह के वक्त ये एक अफसोसनाक वाकया हुआ। ये खुर्रम का इलाका है जो कि खैबर पख्तूनख्वा का जो कबायली इलाके हैं उनमें आता है। तो ये कोई 400 से 600 के करीब गाड़ियां थी, मुसाफिर जो पैसेंजर गाड़ियां होती हैं, ये सफर कर रहे थे बारा चनार से पेशावर की तरफ। तो लोअर कुर्रम का इलाका है, एक मंदोरी, अगर मुझे बोलने में थोड़ा सा उस लफ्ज को जो है, मंदोरी का कोई इलाका था। वहां पर कुछ मुसल्लह अफराद थे जो आर्म्ड थे, उन्होंने, नामालूम हमलावर थे वो, उन्होंने उन गाड़ियों पर फायरिंग की और खवातीन भी थी, बच्चे भी थे। तो अब तक की इतलात के मुताबिक 39 जो पैसेंजर थे उनमें 6 जो वुमेन हैं वो भी इंक्लूड हैं, उनकी डेथ हुई है और तकरीबन 20 जो हैं वो जख्मी हुए हैं। ये इशू बेसिकली ये भी है कि वहां पर मकामी जो कबाइल हैं उनकी आपस की लड़ाई भी चल रही है, और क्योंकि जो पारा चनार का इलाका है वहां पर अक्सरियत जो है वो अहले तशी जो शिया हैं उनकी है। और कुर्रम की अगर अगर मैं आपको थोड़ी सी लोकेशन के हवाले से बता दूं, तो जो कुर्रम का जिस एरिया के अंदर ये इंसिडेंट हुआ है वो करीब पड़ता है अफगानिस्तान बॉर्डर के। और ये जो एरिया है ये काबुल के करीब तरीन समझा जाता है खैबर पख्तूनख्वा के जो इलाके हैं बाकी उनके निस्बत। और
अच्छा,
उन
ये
एरियाज
बताइए, अभी जुलाई में भी मैं पढ़ रहा था बिल्कुल अभी कि जुलाई में भी इस तरह का एक हमला हुआ था। हालांकि उस हमले में तो कुछ जमीन को लेकर विवाद था जिसमें करीब 50 लोग उस समय भी मारे गए, लेकिन उसमें शिया और सुन्नी दोनों मारे गए थे। ये बताइए, ये हाईवे बंद कर दिया गया था, अभी जब हाईवे खोला दोबारा तो क्या पाकिस्तान आर्मी ने या फ्रंटियर कांस्टेबलरी ने या किसी ने सिक्योरिटी नहीं दी कि इतना बड़ा कॉन्वॉय जा रहा है, शिया सुन्नी वहां वैसे ही टेंशन चल रहा है, तो शियाओं को सुरक्षा नहीं दी, सिक्योरिटी नहीं दी?
नहीं नहीं, बिल्कुल एस्कॉर्ट किया जा रहा था, सिक्योरिटी एहलकार मौजूद थे, लेकिन काफिला क्योंकि बड़ा था तो इतनी बड़ी तादाद में वहां पर सिक्योरिटी एहलकार जो है मौजूद नहीं थे, बल्कि एक जो सिक्योरिटी एहलकार था वो भी इस वाकये में जो है वो इस फायरिंग के वाकये में जख्मी हुआ है। वो एरिया ऐसा है कि वहां पर पहाड़ी इलाका है, और वीडियोस भी आप तक पहुंची होंगी, वीडियोस आपने देखी होंगी। तो
जी।
वहां पर जो है वो पहुंच जो है वो थोड़ी सी मुश्किल होती है। काफिला बहुत बड़ा था, खवातीन बहुत ज्यादा थी, तो कुछ जो यानी शाहिदीन थे जो सरवाइव किए हैं इस सारे इस इंसिडेंट में, उनके बकौल उनको कुछ समझ नहीं लगी कि इस कदर अचानक ये अटैक था, और इतनी बड़ी भारी मिकदार में जो है वहां पर फायरिंग की गई, इतनी ज्यादा हैवी फायरिंग थी कि उनको बिल्कुल भी समझ नहीं लगी। वो अपने बच्चों को और खुद को सेव करने के लिए, महफूज रखने के लिए वो बच बचाव करते रहे। लेकिन जब ये फायरिंग का सिलसिला थमा तो उसके बाद वो जो लोग वहां मौजूद जो बचे, उन्होंने कहा कि हमने जब देखा तो वहां पर लाशें थी और लोग जख्मी थे। तो सिक्योरिटी उनके साथ मौजूद थी और सिक्योरिटी उस एरियाज के अंदर रहती है।
तो
लेकिन
क्यों
क्योंकि
क्यों
इलाका
ऐसा
है,
हो रहा है खुर्रम की सुन्नी लोग शियाओं को मार रहे हैं वहां पर?
नहीं, ऐसा वाकया बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, ना अभी तक कोई ऐसी इतला आई है। अलबत्ता यहाँ तक कुछ इतलात आई हैं कि कुछ वहां पर कबाइलियों का आपस का जो इशू था उसको समझा जा रहा है कि कोई जाती लड़ाई थी। लेकिन जैसा मैंने आपको बताया कि ये एरिया जो है वो अफगान बॉर्डर के बहुत क्लोज है, और उन एरियाज अफगानिस्तान के वो एरियाज जहां पर दाइश और जो तहरीके तालिबान वाले हैं वो बैठे हुए हैं। और इससे पहले भी जो वाकयात हुए हैं उनमें भी जो हैं वो खैबर पख्तूनख्वा के जो बाकी एरियाज हैं वहां पर फितनतुल ख्वारिज जो हैं, जो कि
जी।
वहां बॉर्डर से जो इधर आकर अटैक्स करते हैं, तो इसमें कोई अभी मतलब तस्दीक नहीं हुई कि इसमें शिया सुन्नी का कोई अंसर पाया जाता है। ज्यादातर
फितनातुल
यही कहा
ख्वारिज,
जाता है कि
मतलब उनको अब एक नया नाम दे दिया गया है पाकिस्तान में। आई वांट टू ब्रिंग इन जनरल राकेश शर्मा इनटू दिस कॉन्वर्सेशन। खुर्रम रहिए हमारे साथ, प्रोफेसर ब्रह्मा चिलानी आल्सो विद अस। फितना उत ख्वारिज, आउटकास्ट, मतलब the same Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan that was once trained by the Pakistan army along with Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. General Sharma is suddenly fitna-ut Khwarij or outcast for the Pakistan army. So they are the bad Taliban. Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed remain the good terrorists for Pakistan. So that discrimination still remains, snakes in the backyard biting them, but that differentiation does not stop in that country, sir.
Thank you for inviting me, Gaurav. The fact of the matter is that these areas, as you start from the Fata or come down to Baluchistan, are really ungovernable for Pakistan Army, despite whatever the efforts that they're doing. And as the journalist friend, Mr. Khurram, has pointed out, the areas in the proximity of Durand Line on either side are not in exact control. The deaths, in fact, largely do not get reported also of what has happened in major tribal issues, there's sectarian issues, there are issues across the border, there is Daesh there is ISIS. So you combine all these, it is one melting pot in that area. And despite the fact that there's a national counterterrorism center developed in this area where extensive training is carried out of this kind. When recently they were holding an exercise called Warrior 8 with the Chinese in the National Counterterrorism Center. So and then they held an exercise with the Americans about 3-4 months ago. So despite all efforts and all training they carried out in these areas, they remain ungovernable. And also, I would like to add here is that there is most unfortunate is that there is the intelligence is lost out. So even the Chinese are being hurt, the Chinese are being hit. There are vehicles with bombs and laden with explosive waiting 40 minutes for the Chinese to come and hit there. So there is this information is being actually fed from inside that such thing is happening for others to strike across. So these are very bad situation. And recently, I think Pakistan Army has been given some go ahead by the government to just go ahead and sort these things out, which will mean much more killings in times.
Well, Pakistan Army uses their heavy artillery and gunships in this area, and very clearly the Chinese now want to send their own troops on ground to protect Chinese interests on ground, but that's a story for another day. Hurram, आप सुरक्षित रहिएगा, आप हमारे साथ जुड़े पाकिस्तान से, बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद. We will come back to you for more, but for the moment I now want to shift focus to our top story here on India Today, and that's that massive escalation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia today launched retaliatory strikes against Ukraine, sending a very strong message, not just to Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, but also to Joe Biden and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization allies of the United States of America. An intercontinental ballistic missile, according to Ukraine, was launched by Russia, and it targeted critical infrastructure in Dnipro. Now, Dnipro is a very, very sensitive city in Ukraine. I've reported from Dnipro in 2022. In the Soviet era, Dnipro wasn't even listed on the map. It wasn't there on the map because that is where then Soviet Union had its rockets, missiles, and nuclear assets. But there is a significant escalation. The Kremlin air defense apparently shot down 2 British-made Storm Shadow cruise missiles. This after Ukraine fired the Storm Shadows targeting Russia deep inside Russian territory. This was after the ATTACAMs, or the American tactical missile systems, were used in the past 48 hours. We get you more in this report.
Air raid sirens blared across Kyiv on Thursday, alerting its residents of a potential Russian airstrike. In what would be the first use in war of a weapon designed to deliver long-distance nuclear strikes, Russia fired an intercontinental ballistic missile during an attack on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. The missile attack damaged an industrial enterprise and struck a rehabilitation center for people with disabilities.
Technical buildings were damaged in a compound. In the rehabilitation center building, around 50 windows were damaged. Thank God nobody was injured. Today there was a new Russian missile. An investigation is currently underway. It is obvious that Putin is using Ukraine as a testing ground.
Kremlin also claimed to have shot down 2 Britain-made Storm Shadow cruise missiles with Ukrainian territory. The use of ICBMs marks a significant escalation in the war. ICBMs are designed to carry nuclear warheads, although technically they can carry any payload of equal or lesser mass with modifications. Moscow claims that Russia is ready to consider any realistic peace initiative on the conflict in Ukraine, which takes into account Russia's own interests and the situation on the ground.
We are grateful to the countries who are actively participating in search of ways of settlement of the situation in Ukraine. We are open to negotiations and we are ready to consider any realistic and non-politicized initiative.
Russia's retaliatory strikes come after Ukraine fired US and British missiles at targets inside Russia this week, despite warnings by Moscow that it would see such action as a major escalation. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let me once again bring in India Today's Shiv Arur for more on the Shiv. Ukraine says an intercontinental ballistic missile, an ICBM, capable of hitting a target more than 5,000 kilometers away, was used by Russia to target Dnipro, just a couple of 100 kilometers away. Why? Unless Shiv, the missile was the message.
Gaurav, what President Putin has done by getting his missile forces to launch a non-nuclear tipped intercontinental ballistic missile into Ukraine in the Dnipro region, which you are familiar with, is a textbook definition of a missile as a message. Obviously, this missile was not launched in order to create large-scale destruction, or to, attack some particular target, but was obviously intended as a strategic message. Remember, it comes a couple of days after Ukraine was cleared by the United States to use long-range weapons like the ATTACAMs. The United Kingdom had cleared Ukraine to use Storm Shadow long-range cruise missiles as well, which triggered a tweaking of Putin's nuclear policy, making it possibly simpler or easier, the trigger to be much shorter for nuclear weapons to be used in any kind of an exchange. But now by brandishing and flaunting an intercontinental ballistic missile, which usually sport ranges in excess of 10 to 12,000 kilometers and are literally intended for intercontinental nuclear attack in a kind of Armageddon-like scenario, to use that against Ukraine is basically a message to NATO and to the United States. The fact that the outgoing Biden administration has affected this escalation at this time between Russia and Ukraine, says a lot about how it seems like the deep state and Biden's administration may be wanting to, create even more of a mess for Donald Trump to inherit when he takes office in January. But it's a dangerous situation. I don't think things will go nuclear, but here's Putin launching a missile that is in all respects intended to be nuclear, and he's telling NATO and telling the United States, don't push it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very dangerous situation, Shiv. For the moment, many thanks. I quickly now want to cut across to Ukraine, where Dr. Yulia Phil, a strategic affairs analyst, joins us from Ukraine's capital, Kiev, for a one-on-one interaction. Dr. Phil, is it now confirmed that it was indeed an intercontinental ballistic missile? And what more can you tell us? What's been the impact? Some of the images that we are showing our viewers from Dnipro, or Dnipro, as Ukrainians call it, seem to indicate that the situation is quite tense across Ukraine.
Gaurav, good evening. Thanks for your question. I'm from Kyiv, and today I woke up in the morning at 5 o'clock because of air alert, and I started to check the monitoring channels, what's going on, and I saw the message that it's the high risk of applying intercontinental missile, ballistic missile for Ukraine. They even name some title. It's Rubezh missile from Astrakhan region, and I decided that it's something very dangerous, something new, and that's why I spent the morning in the shelter today. Luckily, not luckily, not appropriate word here. Kyiv was not attacked today, but Dnipro was attacked, and
yes,
Ukrainian government reported that among the 9 rockets, missiles that strike Dnipro today was the intercontinental ballistic missile. The President Zelensky told that there are all characteristics of such type of missile there. Of course, no one can tell for sure, but this kind of information comes from our government today.
So, Dr. Yulia, Ukraine has fired both ATTACAMs, those American-made missiles, and the British-made Storm Shadows. Is there an apprehension that the coming days and weeks could see massive escalation?
The fact that US and United Kingdom allow us to strike objects on the Russian Federation territory, it will give us some window of opportunity which we can use very usefully, very effectively for ourselves. I do hope for it, because yes, you are right, we are kind of lack of human resources, we are lack of soldiers. That's true. Ukraine is not Russia. Yes, we have much more less population than Russia Federation. We cannot compete with Russia in our human power, unfortunately. And also we are democracy. It's not easy to mobilize people to the war in the democracy state. You should understand it, that it's much more easier for dictator to recruit people for the war, for the big money, as Putin did it, or just mobilize people forcefully. Ukraine, a priori, Ukraine cannot do it per se.
Okay.
Cannot do it. So we are really lack of force.
Dr. Yulia, is there
asking whether it
is
will
there
be
an
the
apprehension,
worst
Dr. Yulia? I want to quickly bring you in to understand this from you. Is there an apprehension of intensified Russian air and military, ground strikes, missile strikes, or perhaps even a ground offensive in the days and weeks ahead?
Whether it's going to be worse in the nearest future, and the Western media and I guess the Indian media like this formulation about the escalation. I don't like it at all, because for us it's not some escalation, it's just the natural response of this aggressive power, which is the Russian Federation. If we defend ourselves, of course the enemy, the Russian Federation, respond. And for us it's kind of measure which is needed. Like if we use this term escalation, I would say that we need to escalate to survive. I'm sorry, and I'm in my opinion, again, there is no other way to fight, to win here, to survive in this situation, but only with the with our.
That's an interesting perspective you give me, ma'am. You say you need to escalate to survive. But when you say you have to escalate to survive, does Ukraine have adequate resources? Do you have the manpower? Do you have adequate number of missiles, weapons, replenishment of ammunition for a surge in operations that you need to undertake, or that's likely to happen in the days and weeks ahead?
We are lack of human force, but I hope we still can compensate it by our high technological drones and other techniques, other weapon.
Okay.
Our high technologically advanced weapon. Yeah.
Dr. Yulia Phil for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. I now want to bring in Professor Brahmachalani once again, and General Rakesh Sharma. Also now joining us from Moscow is senior journalist Xenia Kondrateva, who's been covering this conflict for the past 2 years. General Sharma, how serious is this escalation, the use of the ATTACAMs and Storm Shadows by Ukraine, and Ukraine saying that Russia fired an ICBM?
Okay, thank you. Gaurav, first thing I'll say is that President Trump, during the electoral campaign, had said he will finish the war in 24 hours, and he'll do so even before he takes over as the president. You know, immediately after the result was announced, the escalation took place. The first 300 drones were sent by Ukraine, and at the same time, when Valdai dialogue was on in Moscow, which is a major event, and President Putin was addressing, he spoke about 4 hours in that event. And subsequently, what has not been done for 1,000 days of war has been done now in the course of last 3 to 4 days, where the ATCMS and also the UK missiles have been allowed to use, as also the Americans have permitted mines to be used, which are self-destructible fine. So when you count these three things together, plus the $300 billion aid which has been announced in last 3-4 days, the whole thing is an escalation by itself. And when you start hitting Russian target, there would obviously be a serious response. So that, it is an escalation. It's very serious. Now, I personally presume it's not an intercontinental ballistic missile. There was a hot mic when the Russian spokesman was speaking that time, and the word used was ballistic missile. So there was probably a ballistic missile. Why should they waste a scarce resource like an ICBM to fire at Dnipro? They have so many other missiles like the Kinzer. So my guess is that it was a normal ballistic missile used against Dnipro.
Let me also bring in Ksenia Kondrateva from Russia before I bring in Professor Chilani once again. Ksenia Kondrateva, what's the buzz from Moscow? Because we heard the foreign ministry press conference where the spokesperson apparently was advised by Kremlin to remain completely silent on the ICBM. So was it an ICBM? Was it a Kinzhal? Was it some other missile?
Hi, Gaurav. So Moscow has not confirmed that it was ICBM. And now we are getting reports for the past 2 hours. Reuters is speaking to sources, and those sources are again downplaying this, saying that it was a medium-range missile. So I think the point, and General Sharma has brilliantly put it, we don't know what was the target. Was there a reason to waste a missile for the target? Was there a need for the warning? Because escalation is anyways there, and I think Russia updating nuclear doctrine has itself given a warning without wasting missiles. Now, what is important is that with these kind of escalation, we have I would say people are quite skeptical here about, Trump, once he joins office, that something immediately is going to change. The recent decisions of Biden administration just made it even more difficult to talk about any possible potential negotiation, because things on the ground do not have any prerequisites for any, any kind of talks.
Unless Professor Chilani,
making its own case.
President Biden is following a scorched earth policy and making it very difficult for his successor, President Trump, to follow a different policy. Is the missile the message, sir?
Gaurav, by escalating the war, the US has put Putin in a corner. He has seen one more red line of his being crossed by the West. Putin has to save face, which means he will have to respond. And that creates the danger. But I think the real issue is being missed out in the Western media coverage. It was the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, who a few months ago let the cat out of the bag when unintentionally he exposed the covert American Anglo-French involvement in the war by declaring that Germany will not participate in such control of targeting. He revealed that these other three countries were secretly helping Ukraine by providing these long-range missiles. By providing those missiles, they were able to control targeting in Russia, because these missiles depend on US navigational data and satellite reconnaissance capability, whether it's the British the British
Storm
Storm Shadow missiles, or the French Scalp missiles, or the American, Army tactical missile system. They all depend on the U.S. navigational data and U.S. Satellite reconnaissance capability. In effect, the Americans are controlling targeting, and it's even in doubt whether these missiles are actually being fired by Ukrainians themselves or special forces from the US, France, and Britain are helping the Ukrainians on the ground in Ukraine to fire these missiles into Russia.
That would mean, Professor Chilani, that this is already NATO versus Russia. That would mean it's already the start of the Third World War if Russia were to target those launch pads where these missiles have been fired from. Of course, they could be fire and forget systems. The missiles would have moved away. But if Russia has intelligence, and if God forbid, if American or British soldiers are killed on Ukrainian territory, that would mean massive escalation.
The danger, as you rightly point out, is that Moscow will now believe NATO has gone to war with Russia and that it will proceed accordingly. And given the fact that this escalation has happened at a time just when the new US president is about to take over on January 20th, it actually makes the situation worse for Trump. It makes it also very dangerous for the world, because between now and January 20th, we have almost 2 months left. Yes. And in those 2 months, this war can go out of control. It can escalate to a point where the security, not just of Ukraine, Ukraine is bearing the brunt of this war. Ukrainians are suffering. In fact, this escalation would mean more suffering for the Ukrainians. But this escalation now, at this stage, brings danger to the rest of the world, including people living elsewhere, including in India or in Latin America or Africa, wherever we are. International
or especially in the immediate belt, Europe. Would Europe be the immediate target, whether directly or indirectly? There are countries that are already hinting at a hybrid war. General Sharma, will immediate ground operations follow? If you were to be the general on ground, how would Russia respond? Take the battle to Kursk, take the battle to Donetsk, or would Russia do something much, much bigger to send out a clearer message, General Sharma?
So I think 2024 is a year for the Russian armed forces. 2023 wasn't it. This year, they have captured nearly 1,250 square kilometers of territory in the east, and they lost a little area in Kursk. Now, Kursk seems to be a disadvantage to Ukrainians today, because the 10,000 additional fresh troops from North Korea have come in, and they're pushing the Ukrainians back in that Kursk area. And then, of course, there is a paucity of troops for Ukrainians to defend on the eastern front. So, see, both ways they have been, I think that Kursk will turn out to be a little fiasco for the Ukrainians in the overall, when you start counting it. I think as the way things are progressing, the Russians will rest themselves on the Dnipro River in the course of next few months, and maybe because the progress has been steady. It has been slow, steady, and it has been commendable. Now, if you say the way the things are going, you have to take a step backwards, the West. I'll say one more thing here. You see, President Trump's dislike for NATO stands out for Trump 1.0. Now, he comes in here, there should be an anxiety in the mind of Europe about what will happen when President Trump comes in 20th, and what does he do to NATO, and what does he do to European Union as a project. And all these things put together, the window for whatever the West can do, present West can do, is only 2 months. After that, what happens, it'll be most unpredictable. Today, you can't outguess what's going to happen after 20th of January.
Yes, but as of now, we are having trouble even outguessing what will happen in the next couple of days and weeks. The manner in which the Storm Shadows and the ATTACAMs have already been used, anti-personnel mines are being given, and that would indicate, Zenia Kondrateva, anti-personnel mines would indicate that Ukraine is apprehensive that Russia could mount an offensive towards the east, so they would want to ensure that Russia does not reach the Dnipro, the Dnieper River, as Ukrainians call it. Is Russia actually putting together, Zenia, about 50,000 troops, including 10,000 from North Korea, for operations in Kursk? Will Russia focus on the Kursk front, or the Donetsk eastern flank?
Well, I'm not a military analyst to answer this question, but yes, because Kursk is the area where Ukraine have transferred most of its most capable troops and the military equipment. Russia is trying to take, it seems from what we see on the map, Russia is trying to take advantage and move forward on other parts of the front line. Now, Dnipro is, it's an aim, but it will be a very difficult task at the moment, and that's what most of Russian military experts are projecting. So I think it will move around the Donetsk area because that's where it has been making some gains. Zaporozhye is another very important field because of the nuclear power plant. So securing those areas would be crucial. And then it will come to Kursk most probably. But Kursk has not been, while the fighting has been very fierce there, and there have been casualties on both sides.
Yes.
That's what we get from the reports. Probably right now it's not the priority.
Fair enough. Professor Chilani, first the American tactical missiles were used, then the Storm Shadows have been used, now anti-personnel mines are being sent to Ukraine by America. How do you see this escalation in the days and weeks ahead? The battle on ground will intensify, or will Russia do something in terms of a hybrid war to send out a very clear signal to Europe first and perhaps America later?
The decision to transfer anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine is an indication of where the battle of how the war is going. The war is going very badly for the Ukrainians. So now the whole strategy has changed. It is not to reclaim territory that has been lost, rather to prevent further loss of territory. That's the reason why these anti-personnel landmines are being rushed to Ukraine to create this kind of defense against the advancing Russian forces. Now, more than $200 billion worth of Western military aid and other aid has been sent to Ukraine, but that hasn't changed the tide of the war. And as the New York Times reported recently, the sense of pessimism in Kyiv and Washington is deepening. The war is going badly for Ukraine, and the choice before the US today is either to accept a strategic defeat in Ukraine or cut Western losses and seek a ceasefire. These are the only two options now available to the US.
And General Sharma, it's peak winters already, it's freezing temperatures. It will be, of course, peak winters in December and January. Is that good for launching ground operations, or is it time to hunker down, stay in the trenches? And will Russia make that dash for Dnipro as the boundary, or would Russia rather retake Kursk first?
So I think the forces being deployed in Kursk are already doing fine job, which is the forces of the North Koreans and joined up with the Russians. So I think that's a area which is separately sealed out. I'll say that they're always in third winter now. Just before the winter, the operations used to heighten up always, because there is a time coming in when there will be difficult time, when the mud will be there and the movement will be difficult. So whatever has to be done in next 2 to 3 weeks. Thereafter, it becomes very difficult in Ukraine to carry out operations historically. So I think their window is very small for them to do that. I'll add one small thing, Gaurav, if you permit me, is the land for peace. The land for peace. Now, this land for peace proposal has been on the table for quite some time. The Ukrainians don't like it. But, now that with President Trump coming in and this about 20% of territory which Russians are occupying, the land for peace, it may be a formula that may come up in times to come to say, okay, we'll talk about the land, but first talk about peace. So land for peace may be the thing that's coming up shortly.
Okay. And we'll continue to track that story very, very closely. Professor Brahmachilani, Janil Sharma and Zina Kondrateva for joining me here on India Today, and Dr. Yulia Phil from Ukraine earlier. Many thanks. The Russia-Ukraine war has been on for over 1,000 days now. And this is the deadliest war since the Second World War in Europe. It's left a massive human and economic scar on both sides. And sadly, now, with Storm Shadows and ATTACAM missiles being used and intercontinental missiles being talked about, there is no sign of de-escalation just as yet.
Kiev residents and Ukrainian servicemen lit 1,000 candles beneath the city's towering Ukrainian motherland monument statue on Tuesday. Ukrainians marked 1,000 days since Russia's full-scale invasion on 24th February 2022.
1,000 days is not just a number. It is 1,000 days of struggle. Struggle, indomitability and unity.
Relatives of Ukrainian prisoners of war gathered at a rally in Kiev on Tuesday to remember their loved ones.
I'm waiting for my husband and his 75 brothers in arms to return from captivity. They were taken prisoner at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. You can say that our lives have stopped without our close ones. It's simply stopped. How can one bomb its brotherly country, Ukraine, sitting in Moscow? Firing S-200 and S-300 missiles, Grad rockets at defenseless people? I never expected Putin to do such a terrible thing to his brotherly Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky presented a resilience plan in the parliament.
In decisive moments, and they will come next year, we must ensure that no one in the world doubts the resilience of our entire nation. At this stage of the war, the question is, who will prevail? Ukrainians, Europeans and everyone in the world who wants to live freely and not under the rule of a single dictator.
The Ukrainian president expects the pivotal moments for Ukraine to be in 2025, and till then he warned his country to remain steadfast and resilient.
This battle is not just about Pokrovsk, Kupiansk or any of our Ukrainian cities, towns or villages. It's not just about one region or another. This battle is about all of Ukraine. It's a battle for all of Europe, for order or chaos for the entire world. And while the whole world waits for a miracle from Trump, God's mercy, we cannot afford to wait. We must not lose our resilience. We must work hard.
Ukraine plans reforms in the military, frontline strategies, weapons production, economic strengthening, energy security, cultural sovereignty and memorialization policy of those killed in the war. The plan to be tabled in the parliament in December will include the creation of a military ombudsman position and a new system of military contracts. There are no plans to lower the mobilization age, and priority in weapons production will focus on drones as they compensate for ammunition shortages. Ukraine plans to produce at least 30,000 long-range drones and aims to manufacture 3,000 long-range missiles in the next year.
The full internal resilience plan for our state, along with all its appendices, will be presented and delivered this December. The key focus is true resilience for Ukraine. 1,000 days of war, 1,000 days since Ukrainians punched Putin in the mouth. We must bring this war to an end, and to end it on just terms, but in such a way that even a toothless Putin never returns to Ukraine again.
A day after the US Embassy in Kiev received information of a potential significant air attack, it shut down.
I got used to it. We are students and we live in the university dormitory. So every time air raid siren goes off, we go to the shelter.
Are you expecting anything unusual today?
I don't know.
I think yes, I am very scared today.
Many telegram channels warned about possible air raid alerts and urged to act accordingly.
Ukraine's air defense units repelled a Russian air attack on Kiev early on Wednesday morning. It was another anxious day in Kiev.
I have my grab bag ready. I live nearby. I'm ready and I'm worried. But I think it will be fine because our armed forces are the best. Everything will be fine. I hope so.
And the war goes on in Ukraine.
Russian forces started their special operations in Ukraine in February 2022. Russia insisted that this special operation was for the self-determination of the rights of people in the Donbass region, in Donetsk and in Luhansk. But since then, for over 1,000 days, it's built into a strategic war and a war of strategic alliances with neighbors and friends, creating its own power axis. Russia challenges NATO directly. At the same time, Russia has maintained its stance about peaceful resolution of this conflict, while it has taken control of nearly 1/5 of Ukrainian territory since 2022.
С нами портал News.ru. Да. Да, у меня брифинг.
Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson was phoned during a live briefing on Thursday and told not to comment on reports Russia had fired a ballistic missile at Ukraine.
Hello.
Yes, I'm at a briefing.
About the ballistic missile strike on Yuzmash that the Western media are talking about, we are not commenting at all.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Ukraine claimed Russia has fired the ballistic missile. The West believed it, but Kremlin refused to accept it. Just like it refused to accept that the North Korean troops were engaged in the Kursk region fighting a Russian war. Instead, more than 70 animals and birds from Moscow Zoo have been flown to Pyongyang as a gift from Russian President Vladimir Putin. A Russian government delegation was at Pyongyang to discuss trade, economy, science and technology. Bilateral cooperation in different fields, including power, agriculture, education, public health and tourism, was also on the table between the two countries. Pyongyang and Moscow have ramped up diplomatic and economic exchanges in the past few years. Years in which Russia has been slapped with multiple sanctions by the West for Ukrainian invasion. On 19th November, the day the war turned 1,000 days old, Russian forces took over control of Novoselivka settlement in Donetsk region. Russia continues to hit Ukraine hard, targeting its energy facilities as the winter sets in. And at the same time, Moscow insists on being open to peace talks to resolve the conflict.
The key here is to take into account interests of our country.
Just like North Korea, Russia engaged with its allies like Egypt to rally its own power axis. It successfully conducted its strategic nuclear exercise in the last days of October, and then Russian President Vladimir Putin approved changes to Russia's nuclear weapons policy, lowering the threshold for a nuclear strike in response to a broader range of conventional attacks.
Update of the military doctrine does not add anything which the West wouldn't know, and does not add anything which would be different, let me put it this way, from the American doctrinal documents on what to do with nuclear weapons. We are convinced that the nuclear weapon is first and foremost a weapon to constrain any, prevent any nuclear war.
Russia remains defiant in its own stand and continues to play its own power games. That eerily resembles the Cold War era power division of allies.
The apprehension is things will get worse before they get better. but we will track the story very, very closely. That is all I have time for on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.